Okay, so last time what we discussed was the problems that our gradient descent has. One was the zigzag problem, and the second one was that most of the loss functions that we have for the current state of the art methods have flat surfaces, and which makes the crawling of the gradient descent difficult because most of them are in flat regions or saddle points. So it's very difficult for the gradient descent to crawl down to the local or a global minima. So the so let's attack the first problem first, like how to solve that problem. The first problem what we discussed was the zigzag behavior in gradient descent. So this is a very common problem in gradient descent, and we want to attack this first, and then we will see how to solve the other one. So in order to solve the zigzag behavior in gradient descent, what we do is the solution that we look for is this, which we call as momentum accelerated gradient descent. So we will understand this um, um, optimization scheme, but we will understand it gradually. So we will not go directly to the equations. We will see how researchers have formulated this problem and how they went to specifically this version of the gradient descent. So in order to do that, the researchers must have got the motivation from time series analysis. So if you go to time series analysis literature, from there they got this motivation that how to solve this problem of zigzag behavior in gradient descent. So let's see what is the concept that is there in time series analysis. So let us say you have this image on the left side. Here we have the stock exchange trend with respect to X. So this is your X and this is the stock exchange price, and it is actually gradually fluctuating. You know that stock exchange is very it's a very stochastic, and it fluctuates um, in a very random way. So on the right, on the x-axis, it's basically the year that you have, or the time you can say, and on the x-axis we have stock prices. But in this particular experiment in which I am doing it, what I am doing is I am calling x-axis as W and y-axis as H. This is for our purpose, because I am taking the motivation from stock price, but it's not exactly what we will be doing. We will not be addressing some stock price issues here, but we will take the concept from there. So if you have this time series analysis here, so what you observe here is that if you want to smooth this curve, this curve is very noisy. You can observe from the pattern that you have here. It's a very noisy curve, and how to smooth that is done through cumulative average smoothing operation. So this is one of the ways of smoothing this curve. So let us see what is that. So here I am writing few equations. So in the first equation, what we have is, this is very simple, right? At W1 here, we have some value of H1. So that is what we are doing here. When we start smoothing operation, what we are doing, we are actually creating a value H1 which is equal to W1. So this you know already. In H2, what we will do? Please, this H2, what we do is we take the sum of the two numbers, W1 plus W2 divided by K. So this is basically we are taking the values at W1 and W2 position, and we are actually adding them up and averaging. So whatever value you have at this point at W1 and W2, you take the two together and average it by K. I'm sorry, here it's not K, it will be 2, because you are averaging the two values. And when you move to the kth position, HK, then you are averaging the K samples, like W1 plus W2 plus till WK divided by K. So whatever values you have at these positions, W1, W2 till WK, you are actually adding them up and averaging it by value of K. So what we observe here is, we can write this equation in a recursive fashion, which is given over here. So this is important. So here the recursive equation is formulated for this particular hk. So in this hk, the recursive equation is formulated like this. And can anybody tell me what is the drawback of this equation? Like if you want to smooth the curve using this equation, what will be the drawback of this equation? Anyone? Okay, so the drawback of this equation will be that if k, one mistake here on this slide, I'm sorry about it. This is not W1, W2 till WK. This is actually, this is k, and k is running from 0 to 140, and these values on the y-axis are w's, or you can say w to the power k. So whatever value you have for a specific k, it is given as w to the power 1, w to the power 2, w to the power 3, and it's not h here. So what h is doing? H is basically averaging. So when you do a kth average, it will be w to the power 1 plus w to the power 2 like this. So once you have a recursive equation for this, the disadvantage of this approach is that if k is very large, then what will happen? If k, let us say, tends to infinity, then what will happen? The first term will be there and the second term will be gone. So you will only be left with hk as h of k minus 1, and there will be no term, there will be no second term here. So this is the disadvantage of this equation. So let us see how this recursive equation helps in denoising this image, denoising this sequence. So here you have a original time series and model which we have here. So this is like this is k and this is w here. And now what we are doing? We are actually running this expression, the recursive expression that we have here. So once we start running this recursive expression, you can see this blue curve is actually h to the power k, or superscript k, and this is w superscript k. So now you observe one thing here, like when your k is small, then both these terms will be effective, like this one and this one. So you can see you have a good smoothing going on in the smaller regions of k. But as your k increases, now you can see it's not smoothing at all. It's not actually taking the uh, what do you say, the fluctuations into account. So ideally it should have done something like this, something like this, but it is going like this. And the reason for that is, at high value of k, only h of k minus 1 is there, and there is no consideration for the current evaluation point, which is wk. So here, at this point you can see uh, wk is the current evaluation point at kth point. So at kth point, wk is the current evaluation, and when k becomes infinity or k becomes very large, the contribution is gone. This contribution is gone. So if this contribution is gone, that is why this curve is not able to follow this curve, and it becomes flattened like this, the way it is shown in the blue curve. So this is not the this is not the curve that we have for this particular um result. So this is the main disadvantage of using this equation which we have given over here, and the method that we have here is cumulative average smoothing operation. So what we want to do is we want to improve upon this. We want to improve upon in this method, so that this type of problem that we are encountering here because of large value of k will be gone. So we have to see how to improve it. So in order to improve this particular thing, uh, this method was proposed. This is the exponential weighted average. So what we do is, actually we freeze the coefficients. That is, we replace the coefficients of h of k minus 1 with a constant value of beta, and the coefficients of wk with 1 by 1 minus beta. So this is same as this equation which is given over here, but the only difference is that these k minus 1 divided by k will be replaced by beta, and 1 by k will be replaced by 1 minus beta. So once we do that, you will get this expression. It's very simple. You are just replacing the values of k minus 1 by k as beta and 1 upon k as 1 minus beta. So when you do this, it's basically exponential weighted average. So let's see what kind of results we will get. But first thing to note about this equation, one thing to note about this equation is that if you set the point that you have here, the variable or the hyperparameter that you have here. So if you set this beta to be very small, so let us say you keep the beta small. So if you keep beta small, this particular term will become dominant. So when your beta is small, this particular term will dominate, and you know that that this particular samples, WK samples, are noisy samples because they are the immediate samples that you are currently looking at, and they are noisy. You know that by seeing this observation here, all these points are noisy samples because they are W to the superscript k, so they are all noisy. So when you put beta small, that means you are actually capturing the noisy behavior. You are not smoothing it out. And when your beta is high, what it means is you are giving more emphasis to this term. And this term is basically the hk minus 1 is basically the averaging term because it is storing the previous averages, and it's also called as momentum. It is actually storing the previous averages of the calculation, or it's also called as momentum. So when your beta is high, you are actually giving more emphasis to the averaging operation rather than that of the this noisy fluctuation. So please note that when your beta is high, it leads to smoothing operation because you are giving more emphasis to averaging or momentum. But when your beta is small, it will be a raw and zigzag behavior in the time series, because you can see it's a complete zigzag pattern. So that's why when your beta is small, it will be uh, more emphasis to zigzag situations. So let us see that. Here I am running this simulation where you have where you have, this is the original one with W, and the blue one is the output of h to the power k. So we are running actually this uh, expression now. So when your beta is small, let us say your beta is 0.5. So when your beta is 0.5, now you can see even your blue curve is actually sitting on the W curve, and it's also noisy. So there is no smoothing out going on here. As we discussed, then when your beta is small, it will be giving more emphasis to the noisy profile. So now you can see your blue curve is sitting on top of the orange curve, and it's not giving a denoised uh, profile. It is also equivalently as noisy as the original one. But when your beta is zero point 0.9, so you see when your beta is 0.9 means when you have increased the beta to a very high value, then you can see the blue curve is actually smoothing out the regions. So it's a smoother curve as compared to the original curve which is given over here. So this also shows that when your beta when your beta is large, it is giving more emphasis to the momentum term. That's why the curve that you are getting on the blue portion is a smoother version of the original one here. And when your beta is 0.98, still more than beta equal to zero point 0.9, you can see it's more smooth, like it's completely out of the trend. So this is the original one, and this is the smoother version of it, and it's so smooth that it is completely off from the mark. So you can see that if you increase beta to large value also is a problem, because it actually gives more emphasis to the smoothing term h of k minus 1, which is the momentum term or the averaging term. And when you make beta small, it's actually capturing the wk term, which is highly noisy. So you have to balance out in between the two. So you have to balance out in between the two values to get the smoothing as well as capturing of the data profile. So that type of thing is important. And one more thing I want to discuss here is actually in this exponentially moving average expression which is given over here, it has been found that when you take a selective value of beta, that is equivalent to 1 upon 1 minus beta values. So if you are taking beta as, let us say, 0.5, that means you are actually averaging approximately two values from the past to do the smoothing operation. And when you take beta as 0.9, you are actually averaging 10 samples from the past to do the averaging operation. And when your beta is 0.98, you are actually taking 50 samples from the past to do the averaging. So it's basically 1 upon 1 minus beta samples that you take from the past to do the averaging for a selective value of beta. So by observing these plots, you can say that this curve is still this curve is better than this curve or this curve. But all these three curves have one problem which is common. Can you please tell me what will that be? They have one common problem, all these three. Though we are saying that this uh, this curve is better than the other two, but still all the three are having one main common problem. Can anybody see that? What will be the main common problem here among all the three? Anyone? Okay, so I'll tell you the common problem. The main common problem among all the three is, you can see when this iteration starts, the blue iteration, when this equation, which is the equation that we are implementing, when it starts, you can see we have a large gap here. Even in this case also, and even in this case also, we have a very large gap, and this large gap we have to overcome in order to reduce the error, because when the execution starts, it's creating a very high error here. Because right now at this point it's okay, because you are initializing the recursive equation with a zero value. But when it starts beginning its recursion, and getting the new values, these values that you are getting here are very far away from the original values which we have here. And similarly for this also, though we have started with 0, but at this point the values are very far away from the original values that we have here. So we have to address this situation, that how to avoid this problem. So in order to avoid this problem, we come up with the concept of bias correction. So bias correction is nothing but you actually have a correction term that has to be applied on this iterative equation that we have discussed earlier. And what we do is, whatever value of h you will obtain, you divide it with the value of 1 minus beta to the power I, where I is the iteration number. So if you once you obtain the value of h, if you divide that value of h with 1 minus beta to the power I, then you will get the plots which are given over here. As you can see, this is the old plot and this is the new plot now with bias correction. So now you can see that the values that were not here, you can see here at this point, it is not capturing the original values. But when you do the bias correction, now you can see at the starting of the iterations, this problem is removed and it is actually capturing the data. So this is basically the adjustment that you have to do in order to completely capture the uh, profile of the input data. So similarly for beta equal to 0.9 also, Now you can see here you have large amount of error, but at this point you can see it is actually not there. It is actually completely covering the, or you can say it is taking into consideration the profile of the input once you do the beta correction. Similarly, this is for 0.98. So now I think if you have any doubts related to what I have discussed, please let me know. Anyone? Okay. Okay, so why it is called exponential average? So we saw that we have the method is called as exponential weighted average. So there is nothing fancy about it. Once you start writing these equations and expand it, what you will get is something similar to the calculation that I have made here. So what I did is I have used k is equal to 100. Let us say for k is equal to 100, we will get this expression. And once you have this, you keep 0.1 W100 this side, and for this you again expand it because it's a recursive equation. So I just kept it with a different color. And once you again sort out the W's to the left side and again expand this H98 with this, and if you do continuously like this, and even for H97 like this, if you continuously expand this equation, then what you will get at the final point is you will get something like this. And from here you can see that all the weights, not weights, all the W's that you are having are actually weighted by beta. You can see here this is multiplied by beta, this is multiplied by beta square, this is multiplied by beta cube. So all the values at a particular value of k, which we call as W superscript k, are actually weighted by the value of beta. So this means whenever you are looking at the 100th point, which is the immediate point, which is k equal to 100, what you are doing, you are actually taking the W as such, and then the previous samples of the W are weighted by beta, beta square, beta cube. So it's like you are discounting, you are actually reducing the contributions of the other values of W other than that of 100. So you are dividing it by the value, you are actually multiplying it with the values of beta and you are discounting it. This discounting actually normally comes from the reinforcement learning concept. I think I feel that there is something similar here also, but keeping this apart. But the thing is, this beta are the not rewards. This beta are the weights which are between 0 and 1, and it's a exponential profile that you will get something like this. So for each W's you are getting a beta multiplied with that. So this is the profile, that's why, and it's exponential, that's why we call it as exponential weighted average. Okay, so once this is done, let us come back to our original method that we were discussing in order to remove the zigzag behavior. So the method that we were saying that it will remove that zigzag behavior in the gradient descent is momentum accelerated gradient descent, and it is actually used for removing the zigzag behavior. So let us see how we will do that. So what we are doing is in using the concept of time series, what we have seen is let me draw the diagram here. From the time series concept, what we have seen is we have these fluctuations in the W, right? We have these fluctuations in the W, and this is your K and this is your W. So for time being, what you can think of these fluctuations will as the steps of the gradient descent. You can think of them, the fluctuations here, as the steps of the gradient descent. So the way gradient descent fluctuates, uh, this also fluctuates in the similar way. So what we are doing now is we are actually using the averaging concept of the time series that we have discussed like this. So this is actually the expression that we are using from the time series concept. So here what we are doing is, in earlier case we had hk as, what was the earlier expression, was beta h k minus 1 plus 1 minus beta times the original wk. So what we are saying here is we are saying Wk is actually mimicking the steps, the gradient descent steps. So that's why Wk is replaced by this term. That is the gradient of the loss function at Wk minus 1. So this is basically the steps of the gradient descent. And as you know, what we were saying is forget W now and consider these fluctuations as the steps of the gradient descent. So these steps will be formulated as the derivative of the loss function at Wk minus 1. Right now, this expression is written in the form of k minus 1 and k. So now what we have done is we have shifted the value of k by k minus 1. So if you replace k by k minus 1, then you will get k minus 1 here, k minus 2 here, and k minus 1 this side. So everything else remains the same, and h is replaced by d here. H is replaced by the variable d here, and the w is replaced by the gradient of the g at Wk minus 1, and k is replaced by k minus 1 by moving from this expression to this expression. So once we have this expression in our hand, then you know from the specific value of gradient descent, like we started with the gradient descent using this formula, but earlier at this point dk minus 1 was not there. Earlier it was minus the gradient of g at Wk minus 1, but now it is replaced by dk minus 1, which is this one, and this dk minus 1 is actually smoothing the step functions, the gradient fluctuations that you have in gradient descent. Using this expression, which we have already discussed, that dk minus 1 will be smoothing out the fluctuations in the gradients, which is given over here. So once you have this smoothing gradient and encapsulated in this d, then you can put this d in this expression of gradient descent, and then you will get this Wk as Wk minus 1 plus alpha dk minus 1. The reason why I am taking plus here is because I have already taken minus in this side in the first expression. That's why it is plus this side. So now this expression is nothing but you are just substituting the value of dk minus 1 here. So what you will get is this complete expression, and this complete expression can be, please note that the d and w's that I am writing over here, these d's and w's are actually vectors. So if GW, the loss function, that is the one which we are discussing here, this one. If this loss function is a two-dimensional surface, then D will be a two-dimensional vector like this. And if GW is an n-dimensional surface, then D will become a this vector and W will be this vector. So this has to be kept in mind that the W's and the D's that I am discussing over here are vectors and they are not scalar values depending upon the loss function that you have. Okay, so if I write these equations, this equation again, this one, if I am writing it again, then what will I get? I will get this expression. This is nothing but I am just expanding it out. So what I observe from here is there are two terms which are actually adding with the previous value of Wk minus 1. The first term and the second term. The first term, as I told you also during the time series discussion, that it's a momentum or the average of the directions that it has calculated in the previous calculations, and the second one is the gradient at the past evaluation Wk minus 1. So what momentum based gradient descent does is you have this original data point Wk minus 1 from where you want to move to Wk. Actually you want to move from Wk minus 1 to Wk. So in that situation, what it considers is, it considers two vectors. One is the momentum vector, another one is the gradient vector. So based on these two considerations, based on the magnitude of these two vectors, it actually generates this vector. Based on the magnitude of momentum and gradient descent, it will generate this vector, which is this one, to move from Wk minus 1 to Wk. So this is the pictorial representation of momentum based accelerated gradient descent. And now you can see how wk minus 1 will be moved to wk by considering momentum term also. Earlier it was only gradient. So it is taking into consideration this vector also to move to wk. So any doubts here regarding this particular concept? Okay, so this is the plot that you can see for this momentum accelerated gradient descent, and here you can see this is the original curve, this is with beta equal to 0.2 and this is beta equal to 0.7, and you can observe clearly that how the fluctuations, the zigzag pattern that you had here in case of original situation is reduced when your beta moves from 0.2 to 0.7. So it's completely gone. It's basically you can see now that these are points were earlier wk. They are the time series. They have taken the motivation from time series to do these type of, to solve these type of problems. So this also shows you that if you want to solve something, you can take motivation from some other areas also. It's not specifically that a particular problem can be solved within by remaining in that area itself. You can take motivation from other areas or other subjects to solve this, to solve any problem in which you are working. So this is a very good example of that. Okay, so once we have this, there is a slight drawback in the momentum gradient descent. A slight drawback. What is that? Actually, it oscillates around minimum value. So as you can see on the left side, I am showing it that, and you can see, at this point, at this minima, the one which we have here, this minima situation, it is oscillating around that minimum value. So it's a problem because it will not hit the minimum value, but it will start oscillating around it. So we have to cut this situation out and see how we can remove it. But one thing to note, it is convergence. The convergence is faster than the normal gradient descent that you have. This is the important point to be noticed. But the only drawback it has is that during the, when it start reaching the minima, it starts oscillating there. So this, on the right side, it is showing you the similar situation but in a bowl shape function. And now you can see here two important things, that each step the gradient descent, each step the momentum gradient descent is making, you see the irregularity in that. In the first step it is moving by this value, in the second step the value is increased, in the third step it is increased more. But in the earlier situation of gradient descent, it was not like that. It was something similar, but not, but the step length was not that big. So why this step length is changing is because it is getting feedback from the momentum term that it has. So it is something like, if you want to go to a nearby Akshardham temple, and if you want to go there and you want to ask for the directions. So if some, and let us say you are at this point and Akshardham is somewhere here. So what happens is, you when you are moving around down the road, you ask somebody, and that person will say, okay, Akshardham is straight. So what you will do is you will move like this, and in the second point you again ask somebody that where is Akshardham, then the same person the other person will tell you, okay, you go straight, you will find Akshardham there. So that from the past feedback that some other person told you, the last person told you that you have to go straight, and this person is also telling you to go straight. Then what you will do is you will accelerate, you will move fast, because you are somewhere or the other sure that Akshardham is downside the road, by moving straight only. So once you go, you increase your speed. At the third point also, again you ask somebody about the direction of Akshardham, and he also tells you that go straight, you will find it. Then what will happen? You will again accelerate with a more speed to to get at this point. But now the situation at this point is different. At this point, if you do not ask anybody, and if you are thinking that Akshardham is straight only, and but it's if it is not straight, then what will happen is you accelerate more compared to the earlier one, and you miss down the minima at this situation. And then you realize that the Akshardham is left behind. Then you have to come back, and again you do that same problem, and during this minimum situation it will start oscillating, because from the past feedback that you have from the momentum term or the people that you have seen, you are gaining confidence from that, and you are increasing the step size based on the confidence that you are getting from your past feedbacks. So because of that, what happens is this minima, this particular momentum based gradient descent starts oscillating and it doesn't reach to the minimum value. So that is the main drawback of gradient descent, momentum based gradient descent. So if we want to reduce it, we come up with the another method. This method was proposed by Nesterov. So Nesterov accelerated gradient descent is the method which actually attacks this type of problem where you have the minima oscillations near the minima. So what they do is they do something like this. They take this first step which they are calling as W advance. So they are not moving, they are moving to a advanced W by using Wk minus 1 and the beta dk minus 2. So this beta dk minus 2 is the momentum vector that it is considering into account. So what it is doing, it is actually taking momentum into consideration and it is subtracting it from the original vector Wk minus 1 to get W advanced. And once that W advanced is there, then it is using it in the gradient calculation to get this dk minus 1, and then wk is updated using this. The only difference between Nesterov and the earlier case of momentum gradient descent is this evaluation of the gradient at this particular point. In the earlier case of momentum base, the evaluation of the gradient was done on wk minus 1, but here the evaluation is done on W advanced, and this W advanced is calculated by using this expression. So that is the only difference between the two. And if you want to see the vector representation, it will be something like this. Here on the left side I have already explained you the momentum based gradient descent. On the right side I am explaining you the Nesterov accelerated gradient descent. So you can see now that Wk minus 1 is the vector, and then you have a momentum vector. So you are moving from Wk minus 1 to W advanced at this point. So this is the advanced point here, which takes into consideration this vector, which is the Wk minus 1 and the momentum vector that you have. So once you reach at this point, what you do, you calculate the gradient descent at this point. You calculate the gradient descent at this point, at this W advanced. And once you have that gradient descent calculation at this W advanced, you calculate the gradient at this W advanced, you will get this vector. And once you get this vector, then you move your point from Wk minus 1 to Wk by using this movement here. So this vector actually considers this and this vector into consideration to create this particular movement Wk. So this is basically Nesterov accelerated gradient descent. And now if you want to see the same curve here, it will be something like this. This I have already explained you, this situation. But in this situation, that is the Nesterov accelerated gradient descent, what happens is that at this point, let me switch the colors here. So at this point what is happening? At this point, it is looking ahead. It is not going to this position, but it is looking ahead at this point, which is W advanced. It is looking at this point but not going there, and from this point it is calculating the gradient again at this point, which is this vector. And once you have this vector here, then it jumps to this point straight. So instead of going to 4a and 4b as it was in the case of momentum based gradient descent, it is going directly to this point without calculating, without going to this point. It is directly jumping here. So if it directly jumps here, then it can find out the minima easily, and this you can see how it is finding minima easily by looking into this paper. It's highly mathematical and has a lot of optimization and convex optimization proofs. So from there they have shown that the oscillations around the minima will be avoided using this particular approach rather than using this approach. So this is the overall concept of Nesterov accelerated gradient descent. So if you have any doubts here, please let me know. Otherwise, I will proceed further. Anyone having any doubts? Anyone? No? Okay. So let me move ahead again then. Okay, so the second problem that we have is how to solve the second problem of gradient descent. What is the second problem of gradient descent? That is the negative gradient descent. The negative gradient descent vanishes near the stationary or the saddle points, causing gradient descent to slowly crawl near the stationary points. You can see from this figure also that I think I had discussed this figure earlier also, but here you can see we have a long valley here which is completely flat, and now you can see how the gradient descent is slowly crawling here. It is not moving to this optimal point fast, but it is slowly crawling. And in this situation you have saddle points, and in this particular situation where you have saddle points, also it is not crawling beyond this point and it's not going here. So these are the 2 points that we already discussed. So let us see how we can solve these problems. But before going there, let me show you again the pictorial representation of contour map, which actually shows you, as I also discussed, that the gradient will be always perpendicular to the contour, and it is represented by the derivative of the loss with respect to W. And if you decompose them into two vectors, then it will be like this. So this particular vector will be always 90 degrees to the contour map. And for the n-dimensional surface, let us say you have a n-dimensional surface here, which is a blue dotted line that I am showing you. Then you will have a 90-degree vector which is given like this. That is the partial, the derivative with respect to w of this loss function gw, and this is your n-dimensional surface. You are drawing a 90-degree vector, and then you decompose that into n-dimensional basis vectors. So you will have all these components of this particular vector, which is the main vector, and you write w as this. So this is the situation when you have a n-dimensional surface, and this is always 90 because this particular gradient will be 90 to the contour map. So as we saw that the gradient descent halts just near to the stationary point, and it's near to the flat valley, and it's not going beyond that. So what the researchers have seen is that the length of the gradient descent step is actually proportional to the magnitude. This already you know, because from the expression that we have derived for the gradient descent, you can see that the magnitude of this, the length of the step that the gradient descent is taking is actually proportional to the gradient magnitude. And near saddle points, this is actually equal to 0. The gradient that you calculate near the saddle points are equal to 0, as a result of which gradient descent slowly crawls to the stationary point and it doesn't move to the minima immediately. So it's a slow version. And now what we have to do is we have to address this situation, how to avoid this. So in order to avoid this, like at the saddle point, we realized that the gradients are getting close to 0. So let's do one thing. Let's divide the gradients by their magnitude to make it a unit vector. So what you are doing, you are dividing the gradients by their magnitude. So what that will create? It will create a unit vector. So if it is a unit vector now, then you have only alpha. So it will be wk equal to wk minus 1 minus alpha. So this is actually now unit magnitude because you have divided it by the magnitude of that vector. So if you want to write it in this way, you can write it like this. This is basically a L2 norm. So I am writing it like this. Epsilon naught is added to avoid the division. by 0. So this value is very small, like 10 to the power minus 6 or something like that. So we are adding epsilon naught here to avoid the division by 0 problem. So here you can see that if you take the absolute value of wk minus 1, the L2 norm of that, you will get only alpha. So that means you are moving with you are moving with the equal step length now, because it will always be alpha now, and it will not depend upon the magnitude of the gradient descent. So this actually solves the problem of halting at the flat surface where the gradients are becoming 0. So once you do that, you will get this results. So this is the earlier situation that we had, and this is the new one after dividing the gradients by the magnitude of that. So now you can see how how it is moving like this now. And in this situation also, the saddle points are gone, and it's coming down to the minima here. So this shows you that how normalizing the gradients will avoid this situation of slowly crawling in the flat area or at the saddle point. But it also has some drawbacks, and the drawbacks are that if you see here at this situation where we have this normalized gradient descent that we are showing you, and on the right side we have a standard gradient descent. So you can see now that the standard gradient descent is converging faster compared to the normalized gradient descent. And the reason for that is that the gradient descent initially takes larger steps, because if it's a convex function, it is taking larger steps. It is taking advantage of this larger steps to get down to the minima fast. But as you know, we have normalized the gradient descent, so all these steps are equal here. So all these steps are equal, so it is taking tiny steps to get down to the minima. So it will take large amount of time to hit down to the minima here, because of the tiny steps it is taking due to the normalization of the gradient that we have done. We have made the gradient descent vector as unit normal, so that's why you know the only fluctuation or the only step size it's dependent upon is alpha. So that is the problem with normalized gradient descent, that it takes lot of time to reach to the minima, whereas this converges faster. So in order to avoid this situation, what we do is, let us recall back again this diagram which I had shown you. This is for the two-dimensional plot which we have already discussed. We have this as the main vector here, and these are the components of the two components of this particular vector. So now the n-dimensional surface which I have discussed with you just a few slides back, what I wanted to show you is that this vector, that the gradient of the GW, this is the surface that you have, the n-dimensional surface that you have, which is the GW, and this is the gradient that you have, the main gradient, which is coming 90 degrees to it. So this is also written like this. This is the main thing. That is the main gradient GW that I am writing here. This one is actually written as a vector combination like this, where each of the components of GW will be derivated by the individual W1, W2 till Wn. So these are the components of the gradient in n dimensions. So if you see the original expression that we had, here we have epsilon naught. So what you realize here is that this particular delta G, if you want to expand it by taking the jth partial derivative of this, the jth partial derivative means you are taking only the jth component of it like this, then it is something like this. And what is this expression? It is actually taking the derivative of GW with respect to WJ, but now what happens is you are actually summing up all the derivatives running from n equal to 1 to n. So you are summing up all the derivatives and then dividing that with the and dividing this expression with this. So what happens is, there is a situation like we observe that the jth partial derivative which is given over here, this is the jth partial derivative. It is normalized with the sum of magnitudes of every partial derivative. You can see from this expression how it is normalized with every partial derivative. So what happens is, if the jth partial derivative is small in magnitude, that is, if the jth partial derivative that you are calculating at the flat valley, if the value of that is small, if it is not 0, but if it is small, then what will happen is that will be completely raised. It will be completely 0 because and it will be raised, and its contribution to the final descent step will be completely gone, because you are normalizing it by the magnitude of the entire gradient descent. That's why you are normalizing this particular with the entire values of the gradients that you are calculating at that particular point. So that's why uh, it actually creates a problem, and it's written over here also that as a result, normalizing by the magnitude of the entire gradient descent can be problematic when dealing with the functions containing regions that are flat with respect to only some of the partial derivatives, and it diminishes the contribution of that partial derivative that we want to enhance. Actually, we wanted to enhance that derivative which is already small, but because we are dividing it with all the summation of all the partial derivatives, that contribution becomes very close to 0. So instead of dividing it by all the summation of the partial derivatives, what we do is we divide it by the specific derivative that we have for that particular direction. We are not dividing now by the summation of all the derivatives, but now we are doing it is by dividing by the specific derivative wj. So this can be written like this, and this is a signum function which actually takes into account this. So x divided by mod of x is also called as signum function. So I'm writing it like this. So here you can write like this. So this is basically what you are doing now is you are not dividing by the summation of all the derivatives, but you are dividing it by the specific value of wj corresponding to that specific direction. Because as you know, there may be a situation that this particular direction, this particular wj direction is close to 0, but when you divided it by earlier expression where it was dividing it by the summation of all the derivatives, it was becoming strongly 0. But now when you divide by the specific direction only and not by the sum, though it is close to 0, but it will not be that the magnitude will be very it will be still bigger than the earlier case. So now when you do that, then you can write the update equation like this, where this is your derivative that you are taking with respect to the specific value of wj. I'm just keeping this expression from here. So this is the entire weight update, where the w is basically the vector now. Please note that this is actually a component of this vector w which I was showing you earlier. So this is actually the jth component which is getting updated using this expression, and when you incorporate all of these components into a single vector w, then you will have this. This is the single update that I am writing for all the equations that you have for j running from 1 to capital N. So when you take down all these expressions into a single vector notation, you will get this. Okay, so you can see this diagram also, where it is showing you that this particular curve on the left side, which is this one, here you can see that with respect to W2, the curve is somewhat flat. It is somewhat flat. So now if you employ the gradient descent at this point, the normalized gradient descent at this point, so now you can see the step size it is taking is also tiny baby steps, and it is getting stuck at this minima. It is going like this and stucking here itself. But when you do the normalization with respect to W2 individually and for W1 individually, like the one which we have discussed recently, so when you do that type of normalization, At that type of normalization, you can see how this is going to the minimum value here very easily. This is done when you normalize the gradients of W2 with the uh, with the gradients with the magnitudes of the W2 itself. Whereas in this case, you are doing the summation one, the earlier case of normalized gradient descent. This is doing the derivative with respect to its own gradient. So this shows you how you know uh, this particular approach is better than this when you normalize individually and the component wise of W's. So in summary, what we observe is that the zigzag problem that we discussed can be solved using momentum accelerated gradient descent that we have already discussed, and traversing the flat regions is carried out using normalized gradient descent that we have discussed also. So is there any way of combining the two advantages together and fuse it into a single one so that we can get a very good optimizer that can take care of this and this? Yes, it is possible, and then the researchers have come up with RMS prop. So this RMS prop actually takes into consideration both these two aspects, and they came up with this equation. Now I think you will be comfortable with this equation the way it is written over here, that what you are doing is you are updating Wj with Wjk minus 1 alpha times, then you are doing a component wise derivative. You are doing a component wise normalization of the derivative, and here Hjk minus 1 is basically done like this. So this update is coming from momentum based approach which avoids zigzag problem. So this avoids zigzag problem, this particular equation. And when you fuse this equation inside this here in the denominator and do all that stuff, then this problem which we are tackling here by dividing the derivative of Wj by the corresponding magnitude in the Wj direction, this type of approach is avoiding this problem which we are discussing here, that is traversing flat regions using normalized gradient descent. So both these ideas are fused together to form one single equation, which is this one along with this, and this is called as RMS prop with the value of beta as 0.9 and alpha as 10 to the power minus 2, which is the typical value that they use. The another method which is quite famous is adaptive movement estimation, which is we call as ADAM, and it is nothing but again fusing the two problems, fusing the two solutions to the problems that we have discussed earlier using these equations, like the first equation and this is the second equation. The only difference between the first and the second is that you are taking gradients square here. In this case, you are not taking the gradient square, you are taking the gradients only. And note that it is also a component wise gradients that you are doing here. It's a component wise gradients. And the component wise gradients are done to accelerate your gradients in the flat valley. So you are taking second order also here. These are called as second order movements. Second order movements for gradients. So the typical value of beta 1 that they take is 0.9 and beta 2 as 0.999. So with these equations, and these are the initial starts, that is dj0 and hj0. These are the initial starts of these values and they are given like this. And now one more thing that they do is they do beta correction. So this is also called as beta correction, which we have already discussed in from the time series concept. This is beta correction. So once you get these values of djk minus 1 and hjk minus 1, you do beta correction here with this, and what you get is hj hat and dj hat k minus 1, and then what you do is you do the gradient descent like this, where you have these values fused in this fashion. So this is basically your ADAM optimizer, and the earlier one was RMS prop, and now you can see how the researchers have fused, and they started with a very basic problem of gradient descent, and they started looking for the solutions for it, and then they how gradually solved their problems and fused them together to come up with the most recent and the most advanced optimizer that you use, which is Adam and RMS prop. So this is actually showing you the comparative analysis of all the methods that you have in literature, and you can see here that Adam is actually converging faster, and it's actually for a less number of epochs, and it's giving you less error also, and it converges faster also. So, and this figure I have taken from this paper. If you want to study Adam, then you can look in this paper. It's from ICLR. It's one of the famous conferences that happens in the area of machine learning. This paper was published in 2015, and you can see I have taken this image from there, and you can see how they have come up with this Adam. Anyhow, I told you the high-level overview of what is the concept of Adam and how it is obtained. So with this, I finish off with the optimization process that is there in deep learning. And next time, what we will do is we will discuss batch normalization and other concepts. So if you have any questions related to the numerical optimization that we have discussed, please let me know. Otherwise, then I think we are done with the class. Any questions you have? Okay, then then we will meet next time. Thank you so much.